Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Spann Report podcast. I'm your host, Mr. Spann, and this is episode number 63. Episode 63 of the report, man. And I appreciate everybody coming in and checking me out, man. I know it's been a couple weeks since the last time I talked to y'all. Um, Episode 62 is coming. I have to do some really serious editing to episode 63 because the sound quality wasn't nowhere near as good as I really wanted it to be. So I'm still tweaking with it. I don't want to put any bullshit out on my podcast feed. So I'm still working with episode 62, but chances are you guys are going to get 62 and 63 at the same time. But yeah, man, it's episode 63. A lot of things have been happening in the world, man. You know, we got a plane crash happened again in Asia. President Obama has pissed off Fox News yet again. The Super Bowl didn't happen, and Marshawn Lynch has become everybody's, working man hero. A lot of things have been happening, man, and I want to speak to him. It's been a long time since I talked to y'all, man. But before we get started, I got to let you guys know how you can get at me here at the Spann Report podcast and let your voice be heard. Now, of course, you can hit me up at the hotline, and the hotline number is area code 313 288-0485. There's area code 313-288-0485. Leave me those voicemail messages on the hotline. I'll play those voice messages here on the show. And of course, I'll respond to you here on the show as well. You can also hit me up at the Spann Report email. That's feedback@thespannreport.com. Feedback@thespannreport.com. Leave me those emails, and of course I will read those and respond to those here on the show as well. And if you want to chop it up with your man Spann, hit me up on Twitter and or Instagram. My name on both of those platforms, of course, is Mr._Spann. Check me out on Instagram and Twitter. We can chop it up on both of those platforms. And of course, for everything you need as far as the Spann Report is concerned, you can hit me up at www.thespannreport.com. That's where you go for all of your Spann Report needs, all of the Spann TV videos, all of the Spann Report videos, all of the podcast episodes are available at thespannreport.com, man. So you can go to thespannreport.com, any guest appearances that I made on any other shows, all of that stuff, man. Go to thespannreport.com for everything you need as far as the Spann Report is concerned. And I don't have this up here just yet, but I do have a Mrs. Spann fan page. So you can go to the Mrs. Spann fan page on Facebook. Like the fan page. We're up to 259 likes on the Mr. Spann fan page. Go ahead and like the fan page. A lot of the stuff that I talk about on Twitter and on Facebook ends up being populated over on the Mr. Spann fan page. So go ahead, like the fan page, and get at me there, man. And of course, you can listen to the Spann Report podcast on iTunes and on Stitcher and on YouTube now. And yeah, so go ahead, leave me a review on iTunes and or Stitcher Radio, and let the people know what you think of the Spann Report podcast. Let me know what you think of the Spann Report podcast, and just help the show grow in that way, man. But yeah, man, it's been a minute. It's been a minute since the last time I talked to y'all. Last time I talked to y'all, man, I was talking about the show Empire. I did an episode on that. Was talking about respectability politics and whatnot, man. And this week, I kind of want to talk to you guys about I don't know, the struggle Olympics. It seems like folks are a little bit upset about a couple things where folks are being rewarded for their struggle, so to speak. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about that, man. And then also, President Obama has since he's on his last term or whatever, and he's in the last couple of years of it. I think President Obama has just said fuck it and thrown caution to the wind and said I'm gonna do what I want to do and I'm gonna say what the fuck I want to say, and it's pissing off a lot of people lately, man. So we gonna definitely talk about that. And I got some random thoughts. And I want to share these random thoughts with you guys, man, because of course some of these things have actually happened to me over the course of the last couple of weeks, and I just kind of felt like I want to share them with you guys and see what you thought about it, right? So one night I'm at home and I've been drinking, right? I'm at home, I've been drinking, I'm just chilling out. I'm watching Real Time with Bill Maher on HBO, and I'm chilling out and I'm drinking. And I was feeling really contemplative, right? I'm thinking about where I'm at in my life, how things have changed for me as far as like, the work life and, where I'm at, as far as my relationship and all of these different things, right? And I'm thinking about, my grandmother. My grandmother's getting up in age, man, and I worry about her a lot, and I'm worrying about my family in Chicago sometimes because I'm sitting here, I'm drinking, and I'm watching TV, and I'm just contemplating different things, right? So I don't know why, Well, I do know why. I wanted to do something nice, right? So I pull out my phone and I text my aunt. Now, mind you, it's about 12 o'clock here in Michigan. It was about 11 o'clock here in Chicago. So I text my aunt and I texted her that I didn't want anything, just wanted to let her know that I love her and to kiss her baby, kiss the babies for me, my little cousins and everything else. Kiss the babies for me, kiss my grandmother, tell them I love them too, Now, I didn't think about it until after I sent this text message. I didn't really think about it, but that shit sounded like a straight up suicide note, son. Right? Real talk. It sounded like a suicide note. It sounded like I was getting ready to check up out of this boy, and I'm letting everybody know, hey, man, it's been real. I love y'all. Y'all be good and everything else. That's what it reads like, right? And so when you're not really doing that kind of thing on a consistent basis, when you're not really letting your family know how you feel about them all the time, which is what I was really trying to do. I was trying to basically let my family know, like, hey, I love y'all. I don't say this enough, right? So, but when you do this out of the blue and your family's not used to you kind of doing this shit, it looks like a suicide note. So I get a phone call from my aunt. She didn't text me back. She called me back. And when she called me back, she was like, nigga, is you all right? That's one of those nigga, is you all right kind of conversations we had. I'm just saying, like, no. And I realized right after I sent that text message that it wasn't what I thought. It didn't come across the way I really wanted to, but I had to explain to her, like, no, I'm cool. I just wanted to let y'all know, I ain't thinking about checking out or nothing like that. I don't say it often enough, man. So as a bit of advice, tell your people you love them all the time, man. Don't just send them no random ass text message in the middle of the night talking about you love them, because they're going to confuse that shit for you get ready to check out. So you don't want to do that, man. I had to learn that shit the hard way. Tell your people you love them all the time. You don't want them to think you sending them a random ass suicide note when you really just want to tell them how you feel about them. And you should do that shit all the time, man. Another one of these random thoughts I was having. Now, sometimes when I'm at, I'm at work, and lately it's been cold here in Michigan. It's been cold and it's been snowy here in Michigan, right? And, sometimes, being that because I work outside, sometimes with all of this snow and everything else and it being cold, work can get slow. So we'll find ourselves sitting in the trucks, right? We'll sit in the trucks trying to warm up, trying not to lose a limb, from hypothermia and frostbite and everything else. And I'm listening to one of the local, urban contemporary hip hop stations here in Michigan or here in Detroit. And I hear one of these 411 pain commercials, right? I'm not sure how nationwide they are. I think I've seen a news story that 411 pain is they're based in Florida, I believe it is. I'm not sure how nationwide they are, but one of the things that always like made me, I don't know. It's one of these things that I always wondered about is how when you'll hear commercials on the radio that are played in urban markets, you'll hear these commercials being played, and you always wonder why they have to be so extra when they're talking to the urban market. Like a McDonald's commercial will have two black people on it, like, child, or, my son going to the pros, that type of shit, right? So I was listening to the radio, and I heard this 411 pain commercial, and it was really, I'll just say this, it was a bit extra, right? It was a bit extra, and I want to play this for you guys. So I want you to check this out. Listen to this real quick.
If you get in an accident, your car or a truck got hit. If you get in an accident, your car or a truck got hit. Just do it, do it, do it, do it. Call us now. Don't be lame. Call us now for 411 pain. Right now, don't be lame. 1-800-411-PAIN. My neck, my back, my car just got smacked. My neck, my back, my windshield just got cracked. Call from home, hospital, or accident scene. Remember, after 911, call 411. 1-800-411-PAIN. 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 My neck, my back, my car just got smacked. My neck, my back, my windshield just got cracked.
1-800-411-PAIN is a lawyer referral service and non-attorney spokesperson.
All right. That was one of them, right? But like these commercials have been coming on for quite a while. And then I in looking this stuff up, I figured out that they were not only country music versions of it, they were like Hispanic language versions of it. Like they have a lot of different ones. Here's another one right here. Uh-oh. Hold on just a second.
1-800-411-PAIN. Don't play no game. Play no game. Stay in your lane. In your lane. Touch my card and I'm calling 411-PAIN. What you say? Don't play no game. Play no game. Stay in your lane. In your lane. Touch my card and I'm calling 411-PAIN. Lock the number in. 1-800-411-PAIN. 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 1-800-411-PAIN.
Car accident? Remember, after 911, call 411. 1-800-411-PAIN. That's 1-800-411-7246. Lock the number into your phone now for an easy call later. You may be entitled to $10,000 of injury and lost wage benefits. Car accident? Remember, after 911, call 411. 1-800-411-PAIN.
1-800-411-PAIN.
Okay. Now I know I just gave them some free motherfucking advertisement here on the Spann Report, right? They didn't pay me for that shit or nothing. But here's the thing. Like who the fuck is calling them? Like real talk. Like if I heard this, like, and I hear this all the time when I'm listening to say for instance, like one of the urban contemporary radio stations here in Detroit. If I'm listening to any of these radio stations, man, I'm hearing this commercial, and not only am I not calling these motherfuckers, I'm damn near offended that they thought that this is what was going to get me to call them, right? And looking like, you know, looking up some of the, because I was looking for some of the audio so that I could play that here for you guys here on the show. And I found a story about how 411-PAIN was not only a lawyer referral service, but they have their own doctors in which they send you to, in which to kind of maximize your insurance if you have any, and like leave you with more debt than you would have if you hadn't messed with them. Like they was on some problem solvers, scam artist type of thing where, you know, they had like it was an expose done on them down in Florida or whatever. But I'm listening to this shit. It's like, why do all of these commercials have to be so extra, man? And they have an account on SoundCloud, so not only will you be able to listen to that here, you can go to SoundCloud and listen to some of those other commercials that they've done, but they're really extra. I've always wondered why do the commercials have to be so damn extra? They did the My Neck, My Back. I've heard another one. It was I couldn't find it. I wanted to play it for you guys here for this episode. It was like a Mary J. Blige song that they tried to redo. Real sad R&B song about being in a car accident, man. The shit is just, it's funny, but it's sad at the same time. If any of you guys have ever called 411-PAIN, man, please write the Spann Report podcast. Let me know how that shit turned out for you. I mean, and what was it about these commercials that lets you think that there was something reputable about 411-PAIN? Please do that for me. Please do that for me. I would really appreciate you guys hitting me up and letting me know what your experiences was with 411-PAIN, man. But yeah, not only that. There's been this story, right? There's been this story in the news about President Obama, right? Now, we always, you know, we've talked about President Obama quite a bit on this show. Some of his highlights, some of his lowlights. I know I haven't always been the greatest Obama supporter. I've expressed sometimes being disappointed in some of the president's actions and being too passive in some of his dealings with Congress and everything else. But seeing as how this is the last 2 years of President Obama's presidency, seeing as how he pretty much let it be known that he was still the dude in charge, that he'd won 2 elections at that last State of the Union address. You know, President Obama has really been like, you know, letting it fly the last few weeks, right? And so in doing so, he was at some sort of prayer meeting. I forget exactly what the setting was, right? But President Obama made mention of the Christian Crusades. And the Crusades were in medieval times where it was part of the spreading of the church or the spreading of the gospels, and they did so by, killing a whole hell of a lot of people. And so President Obama spoke about the Crusades at this meeting, and Fox News has lost their shit. Here's some audio to that. Just a second.
President Obama making a shocking comparison at the National Prayer Breakfast, equating Muslim extremism to Christianity.
And lest we get on our high horse and think this is unique to some other place, remember that during the Crusades and the Inquisition, people committed terrible deeds in the name of Christ. In our home country, slavery and Jim Crow all too often was justified in the name of Christ.
Well, our next guest is appalled by this analogy. Bishop E.W. Jackson from the Called Church and the founder of Stand joins us now. Bishop, thanks for joining Fox and Friends here.
Thanks for having me, Elizabeth.
What place did Christianity and Christ have in that equation yesterday at the National Prayer Breakfast?
Elizabeth, I have a message for the president with all due respect to him and to the office. Mr. President, if you don't want to give terrorists a recruitment tool, instead of closing Guantanamo Bay, frankly, sir, you ought to close your mouth, because you just gave them a gigantic propaganda tool. They called us crusaders, and you've just confirmed it. Mr. President, we're not on our high horse. What we are is on high alert. And the American people would like for once to know that you're willing to defend Christianity and defend America instead of defending Islam.
Okay, I stopped that because that's a 5-minute long video, and I really don't care to hear what this guy says that much, because it's one of the tactics of Fox News to always go find them some resident black dude to kind of shoot down whatever it is the president says. And that was a black guy. And I will make that video available on the SpannReport.com on this episode, so you can go check that video out for yourself. But it seems to me that Fox News is on some why you got to bring up old shit kind of thing. They're upset that the president actually spoke about the fact that there have been crusades, and that the crusades were used to not only spread the gospels, but to enslave Africans, but to justify treating African Americans as second-class citizens in this country. And the Bible is still used to this day to justify why we treat homosexuals differently in this country than we do anyone else, right? So it's not surprising to me. It's not surprising to me that Fox News will lose their shit. The thing that gets me with Fox News is that they're so over the top and obvious about it, right? I mean, here we are. We're in 2015. The president, what they would like him to say is that Islam is an extreme religion, and Bill Maher has actually been on this kick a lot lately too. Speaking about the ills of Islam and some of the cultural practices that are used by Islamic countries and the Sharia law and all these other things, right? And it's interesting when you see both of these I guess you could say these opposing viewpoints kind of collide and agree on this particular issue. It isn't as if the president said anything that was untrue. It isn't as if he said anything that was untrue. How dare the president, how dare Barack Obama remind us that black folks are treated as second-class citizens in this country? How dare President Obama remind us that even to this day, we still treat homosexuals as second-class citizens in this country because of the Bible? And it's disingenuous for them to act as if it's something different. And then they had Elizabeth Hasselbeck, who isn't the sharpest knife in the fucking drawer, talking about how much of an outrage this is, because what the thing that they were really trying to express was the fact that he compared the Crusades to what ISIS is doing over the last few months and the last few weeks when it comes to kidnapping and executing. I believe they just set on fire a Jordanian fighter pilot. So I think they're trying to drive a wedge between that, or they're trying to not necessarily let you draw that parallel between what the Crusades were about and what ISIS is about, which is essentially a crusade to get all people to become Muslim, so to speak, right? And it's funny how Fox News would point out that the president compared ISIS to the Crusades, but they make no mention of the fact that ISIS is the very same group that threatened to behead the same president and make America a Muslim province. They forget, they don't mention that at all. They're so appalled that President Obama would mention the fact that Crusades happened and that black people were subjugated in this country under the guise of it being holy, but they can't mention the fact that President Obama has also been threatened by this group with a beheading. So it's just one of those instances. I might even make it a segment of the bullshit that comes out of Fox News, not to be confused with Fox, the entertainment channel, in which so many folks would like to talk about with Empire and everything else, as far as propaganda and how they portray the black family and all this other shit, right? So yeah, man, I was thinking about that. I just thought that was really interesting how that's propaganda. That's propaganda when they pick and choose how they express what is news and what isn't. And sometimes when you omit certain stories and you choose to highlight others, sometimes you're just as culpable as the people that you wish to condemn. In this case, ISIS, so to speak. So yeah, man, that was some interesting shit. Kudos to President Obama for even just saying so, having the heart to say so. It's about damn time. I would say that, though. It's about damn time. One another thing I want to talk about, right? Of course, a lot of you people, I know a lot of people have heard about this story about, what's this guy's name? I know I wrote it down. Robinson. I know it's Robinson something. Okay. Well, maybe I didn't write it down. Okay. Well, I know you guys have heard the story about Robinson. He was the man in Detroit who had been walking 21 miles to and from work. I believe it's been since 1988 when his Honda Accord took a shit on him, right? And so for the last 17 years, this man has been walking 21 miles back and forth to work every day. He has a perfect attendance record. And this is a story that I read about in the paper. I read about it last Sunday, and I was reading it. And as I was reading it, I remember there was this one portion of the article where his employer, his boss, his immediate supervisor was talking about how he uses this man as an example as to how they administer their attendance policy, right? So this man walks 21 miles a day to get back and forth to work. So if you call to say that you can't get to work because of whatever, but for whatever reason, if your car is messed up, if you got kids, that the school's out or whatever, that for whatever reason, your excuse isn't good enough because this man comes to work every day with no car from 20 some odd miles away, and he's walking and he gets here every day, right? And so the story, as I read it, I'm like, well, that's an interesting story, but I'm thinking his employer, I walked away, or at least I left the paper thinking his employer was taking advantage of him. Honestly, I felt like his employer was taking advantage of him simply because this man has been working for you for damn near 20 years. At least that's how I understand the story. He's been working for you almost 20 years, and his salary is only $10.55 an hour. Excuse me. His salary is only $10.55 an hour. And it's like, I understand that, we have this fight for, upping the minimum wage and everything else. And I'm thinking about the cost of living increases that this man probably should have gotten over the course of the time that he's been working at this particular factory or warehouse. He's a machine operator. And I'm thinking this man should have been given some sort of at least cost of living increase in his pay. And not only that, if you're going to use this man as an example of your attendance policy and what's accepted as far as, the attendance policy, you're going to hold this man up, then there should be some type of special dispensation for him, especially if you're going to use him as an example for all of the rest of the employees in your shop, and that was one angle that I looked at it at, right? I'm like, okay, it seems to me like his employer was pretty much taking advantage of somebody who didn't necessarily put up a fight. He was a dedicated worker, and he should be. I felt like the man should have been rewarded for being so dedicated, because there's no way in hell I was going to walk 21 miles every day back and forth to work. There's no way I was going to do that, right? And I think I speak for 99.99% of us who say we're not going to walk 21.1 miles a day to get back and forth for work, especially when you're thinking about all of the snow that we just got recently this week here in Michigan and in Detroit, right? So there's that. And then you have this, the story went viral. That was the thing. Like, the story went viral. I read the story in the paper Sunday, and the next day I saw a lot of people on Facebook, a lot of people on Twitter talking about the story. And I was like, oh, damn, like, a lot of people really caught on to this. And then he started getting interviewed by Fox News, and then he started getting interviewed by NBC News. And, it just kind of snowballed, right? And so there was this GoFundMe account made up for this guy. People were like, you know what? This man should have a vehicle. He should have a way to get back and forth to work. He has perfect attendance. And, it was a real feel-good story. It was a feel-good story. And so, as the last time I read, I think they had raised over $310,000 for this man. Wonderful story. Wonderful story. And it was funny, like, listening to some of the people or just watching some people and their reactions to the story. I saw a lot of people who resented the fact that this man has been getting, or there had been $310,000 raised for this man, because they saw that they saw it as something of he's only doing what he was supposed to do, is now is to go to work every day. Why no one's looking out for me in that way? There's a lot of jealousy to a certain degree that he's being celebrated in the way in which he is, right? And then you not only that, he's been given a car. I read a story about he was given a 2015 fully loaded Ford Taurus. So he can get back and forth to work. So, like, a lot of people have rallied around this man. A lot of people have donated to this man. He's got over $310,000 donated to him so far. And to me, I'm happy for him, right? To me, I'm happy for him that he didn't give up in what it was he was doing, that he had the wherewithal and the fortitude to continue to take his ass to work, in conditions that some of us, or most of us, would probably never even consider going to work in, right? So I have kudos for that. I really do applaud his effort and his dedication. I think it's a noble thing. I think he should be applauded, to a certain degree. But the flip side of that also goes into, again, like I said, his employer taking advantage of him. And it also brings light to the fact that Detroit doesn't have a decent public fucking transit system at all, right? So the fact that he goes up to 8 Mile and he has to walk 7 miles by the time he gets over to Oakland County up in Troy by the Somerset Collection, which is where, like, it's really high-end mall, right? So he has to go there, and then he has to walk 7 miles to get to work after he gets across into Oakland County. And part of the reason why he has to walk is because a lot of these cities within Oakland County don't want to pay the millage to pay for a busing system, because you know what? Well, I'm rich in Oakland County. Oakland County is probably one of the richest, or they purport themselves to be one of the wealthiest counties in the nation. So what do they need with a bus system, right? What do they need with buses there? Everyone there has cars. And we live in Detroit, and we live in the Detroit area. So why don't you have a car here in Detroit? That's one of the one thing that I've always said about Detroit. If you don't have a car in Detroit, sometimes you're pretty much asked out, because the bus system here is trash. There is no reputable train system here. It's trash. You're pretty much left to, if you don't have a car, you pretty much are asked out when it comes to employment is concerned. And one of the first things that most of these employers ask you when you're looking for employment is, do you have reliable transportation? I remember that clear as day when I was going through my unemployment phase, man, where it was always about, do you have reliable transportation? So it's a perfect storm in which, we don't have a reliable mass transit system here in Detroit. And it highlights that. The story highlights that Although I don't think enough of the news articles really talked about that as much as they probably should have. And then it highlights the fact that we do need cost of living increases for workers. We do need a raise in the minimum wage for workers. This man hasn't had a car since 1988, and he hasn't had the means to save up for one since 1988. You know, that's a long time to be working and not have a vehicle. You know, I couldn't imagine being in that type of predicament where I didn't have a vehicle, I had no means of getting one, and whatever else. So I call this episode the Struggle Olympics because so many people, you know, even though his story is an inspiring one, his story is one of dedication. So many people are a little salty. There's a lot of salty motherfuckers out here that just feel like, you know, there's another shoe to drop, you know. And I've heard examples of there was one story of, I forget the lady's name, but there was a story about this woman who was going on the job interviews, and she didn't have a babysitter. She didn't have any sort of daycare or childcare services available to her. She couldn't afford it, so she had her kids in the car, and her kids were found in the car. I believe it might have been hot outside or whatever, and she was arrested because she left her kids in the car. And you know, folks felt bad for her that she didn't have childcare, that she didn't have a means to leave her kids somewhere where they would be safe while she was going out on job interviews. So folks donated all of this money. Folks donated a whole hell of a lot of money to this lady. And the judge, you know, told her that she should put some of this money away for the kids and their college fund and everything else. And then, you know, turns out that she squandered a lot of the money that was donated to her, that she was paying for, you know, demo sessions and studio time for her boyfriend who was trying to become, I believe he was trying to be a rapper or some shit like that. So, you know, folks had a bad taste in their mouth because of that. And they was like, you know what? There was always another shoe to drop in all of these stories. And then there's the other story. You think about the guy with the golden voice, you know, the homeless guy, you know, whom everybody, you know, they heard him. They're like, man, this guy should be doing voiceover work. This guy should be an actor. This guy should be doing commercials and everything else. And folks really poured out support for him. He was given a job and everything else. And, you know, he had alcoholism problems. He was an alcoholic. He was homeless for a reason. You know, and like all of these things kind of came at them all at one time. So I get to a certain degree why, you know, some people have pause about this story. They kind of feel as if he's being celebrated in ways that he probably shouldn't be. I think he's being rewarded for his years of dedication. I don't necessarily believe he's being celebrated, but I think a lot of it is jealousy in the fact that, hey, nobody's doing that for me. I get up and I go to work every day and nobody's doing that for me. I mean, no one's looking out for me in that way. Nobody's setting up any type of fund for me to donate $300 and some odd $1,000, right? And so it goes into the whole thing of why folks, you know, feel it's important. You know, there's a lot of things that folks deem important that, you know, other folks may not. Some people look at it as them doing their good deed. I mean, what's donating $5 to somebody who I could probably help with this $5? It may not be much, but it's all I can do. And then that $5 balloons into $310,000 because the story goes viral and everybody feels like they want to do their part. You know, it's funny how you see the resentment. It's funny how you see resentment in that way. Everybody wants to compare their struggles. You know, that's the thing that I think is the I don't know. I don't want to say sad. You know what? I do want to say sad. I think it's sad that folks want to compare their struggles and think that my struggle is always greater than someone else's, right? Or the fact that because we acknowledge someone else's struggle, that my struggle is somehow less important because people are acknowledging another one. And I think we get into that conundrum and we get into that mode of thinking where, you know, okay, I got it worse than everybody else. And it's really not a competition to have it worse than everybody else or to claim that you have it bad. You know, I don't think anybody really wants to look at their struggle that way, but oftentimes we find ourselves doing that. And when I spoke about, you know, a lot of people's, and especially Black folks, is deal or their views of homosexuality, especially as it related to the show Empire last week or the last couple of weeks or 2 weeks ago when I spoke about that. I think it coincides with this, these struggle Olympics where everybody wants to put their, they want to put their struggle first and forefront at the forefront. My struggle is more important than yours, when really, we can kind of do the same. We can do two things at once. At least some of us can do two things at once. It doesn't have to be either or. It can be this and I think we fall into that line of thinking, and it does all of us a disservice to fall into that line of thinking, right? So yeah, man. Kudos to that man. I forget his name. I know it's Robinson something. But kudos to that man. I hope he manages that money that's been donated to him well. I'm pretty sure $310,000 at last count. That's a life-changing amount of money. And I really do hope that with that money, he's able to set himself up for a retirement. He's 56 years old, so he's not that far away from retirement age, man. Just if he's able to some type of way manage that money and set himself up for a nice retirement life, it'll be well worth it, considering the fact that he's had to go from 1988 to now walking 21 miles without a car, And so, yeah, but not only that, there's another story I want to talk to you guys about. And it's about Bobbi Kristina, right? Bobbi Kristina Brown has been dealing with, she's been in a medically induced coma. And I said I wasn't going to talk about this. Someone has sent me a message on Facebook, and they asked me what my thoughts on it. And I really didn't have any thoughts on it because I felt like I didn't have anything nice to say. Right. And not that I had any ill will towards Bobbi Kristina Brown or anything like that. It was one of those instances of where I felt as if nobody really cares. The only reason this is even a story was because it's Whitney Houston's daughter. Had this been anyone else, no one would care. And I say that, and I say it with confidence only because I know members of my own family who had members of our family die and didn't pour out this much support for a family member than they did for Bobbi Kristina. And it's not to say that it's, like I have any ill will towards anybody or any ill will towards my family members or anything else. It's one of those things where I believe that with social media gives us the ability to care publicly while not really giving a shit privately. I think that's pretty much what it boils down to. We can give a shit publicly and not really care privately. We can have that appearance. And it goes to how I used to feel about social media activism. When we talked about Trayvon Martin, I remember I used to be really cynical about, social media activism, changing your profile page to go to black, or changing your profile page, or putting a hoodie on and making that your profile picture and everything else. I remember I felt like it's very easy to do that. It doesn't take much effort to do that. And I used to hold folks, I used to kind of, hold folks accountable as if to say, like, you know what, you really haven't done anything to change the situation, only to, I guess you could say you were showing solidarity. And there's something to be said for that. At the time, I didn't really acknowledge that. I didn't really understand that. But it was one of those things to where I just felt like people were fronting for the fact that it was on Facebook, it was on Twitter, it was all over the news and everything else, right? And so with Bobbi Kristina, one doesn't want her to, it would be really sad if this young lady was to pass away. It would be really sad, considering the fact that it's too similar to in which how her mother went away. Too similar, too eerily similar to how her mother lost her life. And no one wishes that for someone so young. I think that she's only like 21 years old. No one wishes that for someone so young. I just kind of wish that, I don't know. There's no really good way to put it. I mean, there's no really good way to put it other than to say that no one deserves to go out like that. No one deserves to have their family put under the scrutiny that her family is being put under right now. I see a lot of people talking about Bobbi Brown and him being a problem. I see a lot of people talking about how they they wish that, circumstances were different, so to speak. But really, a lot of folks are blaming Bobbi Brown and saying that, he's a drug addict and he pushed this on Whitney Houston and he pushed this on his daughter and everything else. Man, that man has lost both his ex-wife and his, she hasn't passed on as of this recording. But if he should lose his daughter, the last person that really needs to hear from people who don't fucking know them in this situation is Bobbi Brown. And I think the social media age that we live in, man, we all feel as if we have this knowledge, or that we have this, everybody feels as if they know intimate details about these people. You don't really know shit but what somebody else told you, and half the time you can't believe that. So I really wish, we've heard so many conflicting reports about what's going on with Bobbi Kristina, whether or not she's on the brink of death or whether or not she's recovering. There's a lot of conflicting stories, and everybody wants to be the first to say that they got the scoop, they got the news. Everybody wants to be the first to say that, hey, I told everybody, I told the world. Everybody wants to be the first. Get the story right. That's what we should be concerned about. Get the story right. Hopefully, this young lady comes through this, and hopefully she comes through this, man. But that's it. That's Spann Report Podcast, episode 63. But before I get out of here, of course, I got to let you guys know again how you can get in touch with me and let your voice be heard here at the Spann Report. You can hit me up on the hotline, area code 313-288-0485. That's area code 313-288-0485. Leave me those voicemail messages. I'll play those messages here on the show, and of course I'll respond to those here on the show as well. You can also hit me up at the hotline at feedback@thespannreport.com. That's feedback@thespannreport.com. Hit me up with those emails. I will read those here on the show, and of course play the response to those here on the show as well. Chop it up with your boy on Twitter and Instagram. My name on both of those platforms, of course, is Mr._Spann. So follow me, talk to me on both of those platforms. And of course, you can always go to thespannreport.com and check out everything as far as podcast episodes and everything else as far as me being on other people's shows and videos and everything else. But fam, I got to get out of here. So talk to you later. Peace.